From folklore and fairies
to monsters and mysteries, it came from the Maritimes.
Don't believe anything he tells you. My co-host, Evan.
Holding grudges so she can come back as a ghost with unfinished business. My co-host, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to It Came From The Maritimes. Just before we get started today, I wanted to point out that this episode is being released just 2 days before the 2-year anniversary of the podcast, so cheers.
Cheers. Who would have thought? 2 years.
2 whole years. Now, today, to celebrate, we have a spooky story for you. I would like to thank Amy from the Clay Space in New Brunswick for telling us about this tale. And I got a lot of my information today from the Backyard History blog, which I recommend checking out if you're not familiar with.
They're great. And there was a little bit of a time there where I was trying to get a bunch of topics. And then I was like, no, I cannot just steal the Backyard History blog's whole catalog.
Oh, that's it. He shares such a wealth of information on his blog.
That's the thing is like, it's going to be real weird looking if all of the episodes I release are just a month later of Backyard History blog.
That's it. Essentially just a fan podcast of his blog.
Honestly.
So today's story takes us back to the 1930s. Times were tough then. They don't call it the Great Depression for nothing. To add to the stress of the time, the folks who traveled through the woods between Richibucto and Rexton along the coast of New Brunswick were being haunted by a spectre.
Jeez.
Not ideal.
No.
One group of young folks encountered the spirit on October 31st, 1930, when they were driving home from the Halloween dance. It was a dark and stormy night, as it often is.
Of course.
They were on the country road which stretched between the small towns of Richibucto and Rexton when all of a sudden a woman in white appeared in front of their rain-splattered windshield. The driver slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car to offer assistance, but was shocked to see the woman had disappeared. He glanced around but couldn't see any evidence of where she had gone. So he got back in the car and they decided to continue their journey. But as soon as he started driving, the figure came out of nowhere and this time leaped up onto the running board of the car. So for those that didn't know, like me, that's the step under the side of old cars, which was used to help boost folks up.
I'm glad you explained that.
The passengers, of course, shrieked in fear and implored the driver to keep on going. The driver passed over a bridge, and as soon as they were on the road on the other side, the ghoul leapt down and floated into the grove of trees adjacent to the creek. The driver really pushed the gas pedal at that point, and he kept going at a fast pace until they reached Shediac, where one of his friends needed to see a doctor for shock. So this group shared their tale with the local newspaper, and the story took off. The spirit was given a name, the Spectre of Rexton.
I gotta say, when you said the thing about driving over the bridge, it's like, maybe I've been doing this podcast too much, but I'm like, yes, smart move. You gotta go over a bridge. A ghost can't pass over running water.
Right?
Come on.
That's it, you know. So the story was quite popular, and it ended up being reprinted in newspapers across North America. This motivated others to share their related spectral encounters. One person wrote multiple letters to the Moncton Daily Times under the pen name The Octogenarian. This person shared stories from over 45 years earlier from that exact same area about a spirit called the Kent County Ghost. Apparently, folks would often see a woman in white in a long white dress with wild, long, light-hued hair roaming through the woods. One such man was a Dr. R.L. Botsford, who upon returning from a late October hunting trip with a friend one morning, was on that same stretch of road between Richibucto and Rexton when he was approached by a woman in white with long blonde hair who glided out of the nearby forest. He was traveling in a coach, and shockingly, this spirit was able to match the pace and kept reaching out towards them with a desperate look on her face. They were uneasy with this mysterious apparition, as you would be, and they lashed their horse to encourage it to speed up, but the spectre was able to match their speed for another few minutes. The two men in their coach were so scared that they took their guns out and they took aim. But the apparition seemed so sad that the two men never did have the heart to fire. As quickly as she appeared, she drifted off into the nearby trees. So, after this startling encounter, the two men decided to take a different road home instead of staying on that same stretch. They later learned that the bridge that they had been intending to take had been damaged, and if they had crossed it at the standard traveling speed, they would have fallen. They wouldn't have had time to react.
Well, that's kind of her.
It was. It reminds me of one of the stories of the Grey Lady of Stony Beach, where she appeared in front of a man's horse to stop him before he went over a damaged bridge.
That's the thing. It's kind of like, it's interesting. I mean, the other one, not sure about. The one grabbing onto the car.
Yeah, that's a little more sinister.
Yeah.
The octogenarian had another tale about the spectre of Rexton. This one had been shared with him by his uncle, and the story takes us back to the early 19th century. Apparently at that time, there was a roadhouse owned by the Irwin family on that same stretch of road. The owner's wife was renowned for her beauty, and the husband for a jealous streak. The roadhouse was a rowdy place, frequently visited by sailors from the Rexton shipping port, which was just bustling at the time. One October morning, the roadhouse burnt to the ground, and no one could be found except for the pet dog who thankfully survived the blaze. The Irwins and a guest called Frank Brown were all missing, and there was no evidence in the ashes that they had met their end in the fire. For a full week after the fire, the dog was acting strangely. He would be whining and pawing at the ground in the nearby woods. When folks finally investigated, they found Mrs. Irwin's headless body under a pile of leaves.
We just made eye contact, which doesn't play on the podcast, but yeah, that's jeez.
Right? They never did find out exactly what happened, but Mr. Irwin and this Frank Brown were never found again. So is it possible one of them was to blame, or we don't know?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was this woman, the Grey Lady of Stony Beach, was she also beheaded, or was that?
She was, yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting symmetry.
It is. And the headless nut of Miramichi is from not quite that area, but
not that far, I guess. Yeah.
Similar zone of New Brunswick. So an unfortunate number of headless ghosts in that area.
No kidding.
A shocking number of headless ghosts in the area. I mean, the Maritimes.
Yeah. We should really look into that. Someone should be doing something.
Right? Luckily, I feel like most of these tales are from the 1800s.
So someone did something, hopefully.
Right? It doesn't seem to be a current issue.
Good.
Now, after the headless body of Mrs. Irwin was found, local legends were stoked of a woman in white roaming through the woods. And they assumed that since the fire took place overnight, she had been in her nightgown when she passed, and this could be the cause behind it. Many who read these newspaper stories were so intrigued by the Spectre of Rexton that they traveled to the area to search for the ghosts themselves. This concerned locals because many of these ghost hunters came from the States and a lot of them had brought firearms with them. So
it's like, we gotta hunt the ghosts, so we gotta bring our guns.
Right, not ideal. So folks from far and wide got swept up in the frenzy, and even the least superstitious person caught themselves looking over their shoulder as they traversed the dark road between Rexton and Richibucto. Hundreds of sightings of the Spectre of Rexton poured in. At a certain point, locals did start to suspect that the spirit wasn't of supernatural origin. The spectre was always seen in a long white dress and robe, but those who looked closely could see that the ghost's wardrobe did seem to change depending on the weather, and layers of warm clothing and heavy boots were occasionally spotted beneath the robe. So there is a reason why we chose this story for an episode releasing on April 1st, April Fools! The Spectre of Rexton, seen in 1930, wasn't actually a spirit at all.
There we go. It's like the Parker Road Phantom.
I know. I was so excited when I found this story. And it really does. It is reminiscent of, I believe it was episode 11.
Yeah.
Where just folks were up to mischief.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this case, it seems like folks... So the story of what happened to Mrs. Irwin and the roadhouse was true. So some local troublemakers decided to take advantage of that local legend and create a spectre inspired by it. So on November 23rd, 1931, the New Brunswick Provincial Police had to release a statement after rumors circulated that one of their officers had shot the ghost. It turns out that an officer had spilled coffee on his shirt that day and decided to hang it out of his window to dry. And folks thought that that was the white dress of the fake spectre, and that the stain was a bloodshot, or was blood from a gunshot wound.
Jeez.
So the next day was a clear night, and a group of 5 teenagers took to the country road to try to spot the spirit, or the spirit impersonator, for themselves. When they arrived where the ghost had most frequently been spotted, 30 other people were already there. Folks soon spotted a white-robed figure at the edge of the forest, and these teenagers started pursuing it. Instead of gliding as the local lore had started to claim the spirit did, the pursuers noted that it actually hopped, skipped, and jumped with great agility. One of the teenagers was a well-known athlete, and he almost caught the Spectre. But all of a sudden, the ghost dropped its white robe and disappeared into a thick bunch of bushes. The group could hear someone breathing heavily and the rustle of twigs and tree branches, but they were unable to find the hiding presence. So they collected the robe and found that it was a flannel material with a safety pin strategically placed to pull the robe together to give the impression of two large eye holes. And this does make more sense when you think back to the original sighting from Halloween night when the ghost leapt onto the car.
Yeah, no, that does make more sense. I think the thing that gets me is that it seems like when they don't have the white robe on, they aren't visible. So it's curious.
Well, this is where it gets good. So who was the Spectre of Rexton? As if the Great Depression wasn't bad enough with financial collapse, alcohol was prohibited across North America. Now, Prohibition did end in New Brunswick in 1927, but it lasted in the States until light beer was allowed to be sold in 1933. Because Rexton was such a bustling port back in the day, they were in a strategic location to accept illegal liquor off of ships from Europe and arrange to have it sold in the States.
Ooh.
So it gets better. One of these bootleggers had heard the story of Mrs. Irwin's murder when he was a young boy, and the rumors of her spirit roaming in the Rexton woods. So this bootlegger decided to revive the urban legend as a distraction for locals and law enforcement while they transported their illegal alcohol.
This is some Scooby-Doo stuff.
It is. So at first they actually used like a ghostly effigy that they placed on wires between trees so they could pull it when folks drove by when they were trying to move things so it could act as a distraction. But then they upgraded to one of them dressing up and playing the part so they could be a little more agile and mix it up a bit.
That makes sense why it would have looked more floaty before, too.
Absolutely. And the bootleggers were actually responsible for many of the ghost sightings that were called into the police because they would use them strategically lure the police away from where they were going to be that night.
Ethics of it all aside, is a pretty fantastic plan.
Right? So this tale apparently inspired a movie called The Spectre of Rexton, which was made in 1987. So if you want more of this story, check it out. I haven't seen it personally, so I can't vouch for it. But I mean, we always love supporting local art here.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now.
Now, that was our story of the rum runner ghost of Rexton. I hope you enjoyed it and that you were pranked by my hilarious April Fools. Now, for our segment today, I thought I would share a few famous paranormal hoaxes. We already mentioned the Parker Road Phantom. If you haven't already listened to that episode, I insist you do. One of our earlier ones, and it was a lot of fun. The first paranormal hoax I'm going to talk about today was the Cottingley Fairies. So in 1917, two young cousins named Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths took some photos while playing in their English garden. Elsie's mother was shocked when she saw that the photos had not just the girls in them, but little fairies dancing around. The photos were examined by numerous paranormal experts, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, and they were deemed authentic. However, some did remain skeptical over the years, and in the 1980s, the truth was finally revealed. The girls confessed that they had used hat pins to stand up photos they had drawn of fairies. Was it all false, though? Until their dying day, the cousins did claim that at least one of the photos did truly depict the fairies, and that's what they had inspired their other drawings based on.
That's interesting to say, no, one of them's real, and then the other ones are fake.
And it's a bold claim.
Yeah, just got like, no, we had one real one, and then we made the fakes based on it.
Have you seen the photos?
I haven't. I'm gonna need to, I'll look them up right now.
Yeah, they do look fairly convincing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially from a time where Photoshop wasn't a thing. I could see being duped by them.
Like, I'd say some of them, it does look like a figurine type of thing, but I can get, especially, it depends on the picture. Some of them look better than others, I find.
Well, those are probably the real fairy ones, Evan.
Well, and I mean, obviously.
Now, our next famous paranormal hoax is about Mary Toft. Have you ever heard of this?
I recognize the name. I don't know if I recognize the, I definitely heard of it, but I don't remember all the details.
It's a very weird one. I first heard it in an episode of Lore, I believe, back when I first started listening to podcasts.
Okay.
So in 1726, a young woman named Mary Toft became well known in Surrey when she gave birth to a litter of rabbits. She claimed that she had already been pregnant when she was startled by a large rabbit and then all of a sudden started birthing rabbits herself. Now, they weren't full rabbits, but parts of rabbits. Now, she fooled multiple doctors who were present for these unusual births, but some of them were skeptical and threatened her with painful experiments to determine the cause of these rabbit parts emerging from her body. She ultimately revealed the truth. For reasons never actually revealed, she had faked the entire ordeal by using rabbit parts she found. I'll leave the gory details as to how she got them into her body up to your imagination. But needless to say, she never lost her reputation as the Rabbit Woman.
I don't love that.
No, it's it's a weird one.
It raises a lot of questions.
Now, this next one is one of my favorite hoaxes of all time. So if you do not want a 33-year-old movie spoiled, please skip ahead. But this is about the BBC's Ghost Watch movie. Have you heard of it, Evan?
I have.
Yeah, on October 31st, 1992, which was my very first Halloween.
How appropriate.
Right. BBC in the UK aired a show called Ghost Watch, which in the preceding weeks had been advertised as a real-life paranormal investigation that the show was going to host in London on Halloween night. The show was hosted by well-known BBC reporters. At first, as you're watching this movie, or as people would have been watching live on BBC that night, or what they thought was live, you glimpse the shadow of a man in the background and hear odd noises. And the paranormal activity really ramps up as the night proceeds, ending with the devastation of the BBC studio, as the news anchor implies that the spirit had used the signals from the broadcast to spread out to wherever it was streamed. So it turns out the BBC did too good of a job convincing folks that that was a live broadcast that night, because people thought that these events were actually occurring in real time in 1992 and completely freaked out, assuming dark forces had been unleashed on them through their TV.
I mean, like, honestly, there's a part of me that loves the weird, like, cyber paranormal stuff.
Yes.
So, like, I do love that.
Right? If you haven't watched it, it is absolutely worth a watch.
I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it before, and I remember being like, huh. It's one of those things where you're like, would I have fallen for that? It's like, maybe.
I was pretty gullible. I probably would have.
Yeah.
I would have been like, dark forces come.
You had 0 years old. Dark forces come to me. And then our mom's just like, huh, that's new. She learned how to talk.
It explains why I'm so spooky these days.
Exactly. The ghost did come to you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of It Came From The Maritimes. You can find us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at It Came From The Maritimes, Blue Sky at ICFT Maritimes, and if you have any Atlantic Canada folklore you would like to see covered or any spooky encounters of your own, email us at itcamefromthemaritimes@gmail.com. We are also on Patreon. Check us out if you want some bonus content and give us a little extra support. If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review if you feel we're worthwhile to help other people find us. So we like to end each episode with a little folklore tip. Evan, do you have one for us?
I do, and I didn't know all the details when we chose this one. On the first day of the month, say rabbit's first thing for good luck.
It's relevant in so many ways to today's episode.
Sure is. Bye.
Thanks for listening. That's so funny. I actually completely forgot about that part of the segment.